Hello and welcome to the Sunday Politics here in the glorious west of England. Coming up, forget Hinkley, we're talking about the other vast energy project held up by delays.
Every home in Britain will be able to upgrade to a smart meter by 2020.
We're all meant to be getting smart meters very soon. It's part of an £11 billion scheme that's meant to save you money on your bills. So why have only a few of us bothered so far? And two high-energy politicians join me in the studio this week, so don't reach for the off button. They are the Labour MP for Bristol West, that's Thangham Debonair, and UKIP's Deputy Chairman, the Euro MP, William Dartmouth. Welcome to you both. I want to talk about this week's big story, which is the autumn statement, and it's emerged that the cost of leaving Brexit, according to the Office of Fiscal Responsibility, is £58 billion. Worth it, William?
Well, this is just yet another sort of wonky estimate from the same people who produced lots of wonky estimates in the past, including completely failing to predict the great financial crash of 2009, the worst financial crash since the 1930s. Now, my colleague, although I've never actually met him, but he's on the same side of the political argument, Professor Patrick Minford, has pointed out the very many flawed assumptions on which this estimate is based. The fact of the matter is, we're still, as most people now still know, we're still in the European Union, and until such time we leave, which is actually over 2 years away.
On the off
and so these estimates really can't be taken very seriously.
On the off chance that they're right, would it be worth it?
Yeah, well, we've always argued that either the UK is a sovereign country or
so the money doesn't matter,
or it's not.
So it's
and the fact of the matter is that we need to have retain control of our laws, an end to open borders, stop making payments to the European Union, and also a repatriation of fishing.
Okay, so then if that costs £58 billion, then that's...
No, and I also disagree with that because the fact of the matter is that we've actually dodged a bullet by getting out.
Okay,
before
let Thangham come in.
58 billion? You call that dodging a bullet?
What, sorry?
58 billion, you call
If
that
we'd
dodging a bullet?
If we'd stayed in, the fact of the matter is the Italian banks are insolvent, the Greek crisis is still going on, the German banks are insolvent, and these statistics are just not right for reasons I've given.
What price would have been acceptable? I mean, 58 billion doesn't sound acceptable to me. Would 5 billion have been acceptable? Would 2 billion have been acceptable? What would have been acceptable? Because I think what we need to talk about this week is there's a 122 billion black hole in the country's finances, 58 of which can be accounted for by Brexit alone. The pound is plummeting. Growth, yes, and things are going to get worse as we leave, as you know. Because when we come out of the single European market, firms, companies in my constituency and across the West won't be able to trade in the same way they've been able to trade. We've got 3 million European workers who are doing a great job here in Britain. Where are they going to go? Okay. Nobody really knows.
So in that case, as it's likely to be down to MPs whether they trigger Article 50 and proceed with Brexit, what will you do?
Well, we've said all along in Labour Party, we know that when people voted leave, they didn't vote to lose their jobs. They didn't vote just for chaos. And that's what we've got at the moment. So, at the moment, what I've said very, very clearly is, I want to know what the government's plan is. And all they've said so far is Brexit means Brexit, or occasionally they say it means breakfast. But basically, they have no plan. So at the moment, there's nothing to vote for. We can't possibly trigger Article 50 without knowing that. You can push away.
Would you vote for Article 50 to be triggered at the moment or before?
At the moment, no, because there's no plan. But we've got to wait. We need to know what the plan is.
I'd simply point out that China, which is not a member of the European Union, exports 1.5 times more goods to the European Union than actually we do. You do not have to be a member of the European Union in order to have access to the single market. And that is the big lie that is constantly being put forward.
Do you want to explain what WTO rules are, William? Do you want to explain what they are? I can explain them.
I'd also like to make...
Do you want to put tariff barriers on the
Don't talk over each other.
The average is 3.5%. I'd also like to make...
3.5% more than they have to do at the moment.
I'd also like to make the point that so long as we stay in the single market, so long will the over 85% of British businesses that don't trade with the European Union, or the British economy that doesn't trade with the European Union, is subject to the full burden and weight of EU weights and regulations.
All the businesses I've spoken to, the university, the hospitals, the aerospace industry, the aerospace industry, do not shout over me, the financial services industry, have all said they need to be in the single European market.
You ought to get out more. You ought to get out more.
Okay, all right.
With respect.
With respect.
It's good that you added that.
Now,
inevitably.
if I dare say it, UKIP's turmoil at the top is taking its toll. In Swindon, several senior officers have quit. Well, now their former chairman has claimed the party is going nowhere. So with a new leader due to be announced on Monday, what next for the party that was once Team Farage? Here's Paul Baltrop.
The rise and rise and rise of UKIP in the West. From European elections to council contests, taking votes from the Blues and especially recently the Reds.
Politically, Swindon is always a tight fight between Labour and the Conservatives, but UKIP have made quite an impact in recent years. Last year's general election, they came third in the town. On the ground, membership swelled, helping deliver a strong vote for Leave in this year's referendum. But since then, things have gone badly backwards.
On Fairlam Short, United Kingdom Independence Party, 5,000.
He stood for Parliament last year, as well as in Council and Police and Crime Commissioner elections, and was Swindon chairman. But John Short has now quit.
I left because I was totally dissatisfied with what was happening with the party, with all the infighting and the way in which it was going. It was not going anywhere, nationally now, or even centrally. And all the infighting and the way in which they were destroying the party, I thought, nah, I don't want to be part of this.
In just 5 months, UKIP's had 2 leadership contests, top contenders quitting the party, and scuffles in Strasbourg.
It's sad, it's lost its way, it's becoming a farce. They want to sit down and get it sorted out. It tells you the story that it's chaos, that it should be, somebody should sit down, or a group should sit down and really resolve it.
So no more campaigning for him or for dozens of other Swindon members who've also left the party. Numbers are down across the West Country. In Filton and Bradley Stoke, their chairman is staying loyal but feels let down.
To have the sort of business that's been going on at the top, that is frustrating. All we want to do is to get on and you know, do the work of the party, you know, essentially what they want to do and what they want to try and achieve. And we've kind of been hindered in that way, which it has been a massive frustration. One minute you think you've got a leader, the next minute you haven't, the next minute they're having a punch-up in the European Parliament, and all that is a little bit, you know, it's nonsense, and we need to get away from that and concentrate on the job in hand, get our own sort of club in order and move forward again, really.
Ben Walker and Ed Rose.
He was greeted with fanfare in 2012 when, as a Conservative councillor, he defected to UKIP. The party was entering a purple patch. It culminated in the referendum of 2016, a turning point for Britain and possibly for UKIP.
Well, that was Paul Baltrop. William, is this the beginning of the end for UKIP?
No, absolutely not. But before I say anything else, I do want to apologise to our supporters for the sort of disorganisation of the last 3 months. The fact of the matter is that there's a leadership election going on now. There'll be a new leader on Monday, and then we will all get behind the leader.
And of course, as we've just done that before.
Well, it's going to happen now. But also, there's actually another point, because as we've just heard, there are many MPs, many members of the political establishment, Tony Blair, Peter Mandelson and the rest, who are trying to unpick the referendum result. Now, it was a decisive referendum in terms of parliamentary constituencies. Over 400 parliamentary constituencies have actually voted to leave, and it's important that is carried through. And that's why we need a strong UKIP.
I will predict that those characters won't have a fight about it, as your members do.
Well, sorry?
They won't be having a fight. You have fisticuffs, don't you?
I've already apologised for that, but I would also point out that all parties have divisions. The Parliamentary Labour Party passed a no-confidence vote in its leader. The Conservative Party is heavily split on Brexit and Brexit terms, and as for the Liberal Democrats, their chief concern seems to be to actually overturn the referendum result. Okay. We've all had some problems, but from Monday onwards, it's a new chapter, which...
It'll be interesting to discover, though, won't it, whether or not having a new leader actually allows you to come up with a plan plan for Brexit, because so far what you've done in UKIP is campaign for something which is a bit like going out for a walk without any clue where you're going. No, when the country voted, it didn't know what it was voting for. You told people on the sides of lorries, you said there'll be £350 million each week for the NHS.
That wasn't our campaign. That was the campaign we were excluded from.
Well, it was a Leave campaign, and people voted on the basis of information which turned out not to be anywhere near accurate. And this is not like any other political decision at all.
Okay.
It's one that we'll never be able to reverse.
I don't want to fight the referendum again, but John Major and Tony Blair, as you mentioned, are now saying, well, look, it could be reasonable to have a second referendum, or at least a vote on what the negotiations are. Would you support that?
What I would support is us having a clue from the government as what their plan is. Do they want us to be in the single European market? Do they want us to be in the customs union? Do they want us to be completely out? What are they going to do about the trading rules between the countries? There's all sorts of unknowns, and we don't have a single clue. So I think that other leaders have been quite right to weigh in and say, we need to talk about this. Parliament has to properly scrutinise.
So it could be unpicked, I think, even at this stage.
It should be unpicked and examined and scrutinised properly, because we're never going to be able to
Well,
go
there
back
we
to
are.
this.
We've actually just heard about it. There's an undetermination to unpick the referendum result. And once again, at the risk of being slightly repetitive, the big disadvantage about staying in the single market is that less than 15% of the British economy is accounted for by exports to the European Union. And nonetheless, the entire British economy is subject to the full
during
rate
the campaign, I did.
Well, I wish that point had been made.
During the campaign, a million times we heard we could be like Norway. And Norway is in the single market.
No.
In the single European market? Yes,
nobody who knows anything about it has seriously put forward the Norway option. The fact of the matter is there are various different ways of managing it. And I come back to a point that I made earlier on. The three biggest exporters to the European Union, Russia, China and the United States, have access to the single market and do not have trade agreements.
And they have to pay for it. And
no,
that's
they don't.
the point. Yes, they do.
Well, the phrase
pay for
it. Well, we are paying more.
Let me go back to...
We're already paying more in...
Let me go back to UKIP.
So, sorry, I must just make this point.
No,
we are already
David wants to ask you about UKIP.
We are already paying more...
I think David didn't want to rerun the referendum.
It's payments to the EU rather than we are in tax.
Let me ask you this. You're supporting Mr Nuttall for the leadership of UKIP, is that right?
Yes, I've actually put out a statement to that effect.
OK, right. And what's interesting is, Sangam, is that UKIP did get an enormous victory, didn't it, with the referendum. Mr Trump has won in the United States.
Yep.
Why aren't people going to parties like yours when they're disaffected?
Well, that's a good question, David. I mean, I think we need another general election before we can when we can get a decent answer to that question. I think at the moment people are asking all sorts of really interesting questions. They want to know what public services they're going to have.
They're saying that Labour isn't the answer.
Well, that's varying across the country, and we've won various council elections recently. We won in Bristol. We won the mayoral election. In Bristol, we are in control of the council, and we have a Labour mayor. So I think you'll find in Bristol people have been voting Labour, and they're really pleased to.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you. Now, it's costing 2/3 the price of a nuclear power station, but it's had none of the attention. The government's rollout of smart meters to every home in Britain has sailed by almost unnoticed. But like Hinkley, it's another example of a flagship energy scheme that's been buffeted by technical problems and delays. Here's Robin Markwell.
On this quiet Bristol street, a digital revolution is about to take place.
Kevin from Over Energy, come to exchange your gas and electricity meters today for you.
Oh, lovely.
Brilliant.
Come on in.
Thank you very much.
This is a scene the government wants repeated on every doorstep. Energy suppliers offering customers a smart meter.
I wanted to be more aware of my costings. I'm a single mum. I've got 3 girls, and 3 girls, lots of appliances, just to see where my money's going each month.
After about an hour's work in the garage, the new meter's installed. It'll transmit how much gas and electricity she uses back to the supplier every half an hour. It means accurate bills and an end to meter readings. Mum of 3, Kelly, now has new instructions for her daughters.
Lights off, chargers unplugged in the evening. Mum is watching the smart meter.
Just having this new gadget in the home is meant to gently remind you to use less. Studies show consumption of gas and electricity can drop by 2 to 3%. It means bills will fall by an average of £33 a year. But all that could be wiped out in the short term at least if the cost of installing them is passed on from suppliers through bills.
Currently, most of our homes in Britain still have gas and electricity meters using outdated technology.
It was a Conservative manifesto pledge that everyone should be offered a smart meter by 2020. Only 7% of homes have one now. Some sniff another broken promise. So we asked the advice of two suppliers from Bristol.
There still remain some challenges for rolling out smart meters to every home. There are still some technology barriers that we need to, as an industry, overcome.
It's possible but exceptionally challenging. I think the programme was initially delayed at the national level.
Peter, I think you're using business speak for no, it's not possible.
Well, it is very, very challenging. I mean, it can be done, but it's a mighty target.
Experts at GCHQ in Cheltenham have been called in to ensure that smart meters are safe from hackers, and cybersecurity isn't the only concern.
I like to think of it as the biggest infrastructure project most people have never heard of. It's about 2/3 the size of Hinkley Point C. So we're talking about an initial capital cost of some £11 billion, but some people think it may have even grown to 14 billion. So our chief beef is not with smart meters, it's with the cost of this programme and the over complexity.
Whether or not you buy the government's arguments over smart meters, the truth is they're the start of something much bigger. Washing machines that turn themselves on when they're full. Fridge freezers that order your own shopping for you. This is what they call the Internet of Things, and all our homes are set to become much smarter.
To take a sneak glimpse into the future, I was invited inside Bristol's Data Dome. Here they lay out the possibilities of what all this data from our new gadgetry really means. For politicians, there's now a raft of new ways of knowing what its electors are up to as they try to plan for the future.
Well, smart meters are just another example of connecting more and more things around us up to the internet. For example, your Fitbit on your hand is a thing that takes data. Your car actually is sending data to the internet. Your house now can send energy data or other data. And actually there's loads of examples, both from medicine, from transport, from energy. And this isn't a bad thing, but how we manage all this data is a big question for us.
So one small step for a homeowner, one giant leap for the energy industry, and who knows where we might end up.
Yeah, it's all very well, but what about an iron that can actually iron your shirts without you having to do it? I don't know. Are you two going to get one? Or?
I'm going to get one. I haven't been offered one yet.
Yeah, William.
Anyone wants to offer me one, they're very welcome.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's, first of all, it's gigantically expensive. As a man on the film said, it's estimated at 11 billion. It's much more likely to be about like 15 billion. And also there's a credible estimate that was published in the Daily Telegraph saying that the most it's going to save is maybe about £11 a year per household. And I think there are very, very serious questions about whether this is the right thing that we should be doing with that amount of money. There's lots of other infrastructure problems in our country.
Well, I actually agree there are an awful lot of infrastructure problems that we need to sort out if we're going to compete on the global market. But to come back to smart meters, I think it's a good idea to give people information about how they can use electricity and other fuels more efficiently. But this project is a good example of the government going wrong. 3 years, it's overdue by 3 years. We've been told that the costs are going up and the benefits are going down. So we've called for an urgent pause and review to see if this project is actually going to be needing more tweaking, if it's going to be worth continuing with, and we actually need to work out what's the best way to help people to be more energy efficient. And at the moment, this project isn't working.
They've offered me one, actually. And
have they?
They have, and they're coming in a couple of weeks' time to fit it. But it's an hour-and-a-half appointment.
Yep.
So you can imagine what that's going to be across the country if every single person gets this. But it will save energy, because I should be looking at and saying, oh, nope, that's got to go off.
Big projects are worth big investments, and I think we've got a huge problem on our hands. We've got climate change, which is one of the clear and present dangers that we're not facing up to enough in this country.
Well, Donald Trump doesn't think that. What about UKIP?
Oh, sorry?
What about climate change?
We're very sceptical about climate change, and basically what we have to be very, very careful with climate change is not just used as an argument to push through a lot of unnecessary, job-destroying, wealth-destroying regulations, and that very much seems to be what
Using
actually happens.
energy efficiently is a good idea.
Yeah,
we have a climate change is a clear and
huge.
present danger. Being a climate change denier is very, very last century.
We're all in favour.
Get with the
No one's ever accused me of being 21st century before.
20th? No, I said very last.
No, I said 21st century before.
Good.
No, we're all in favour of energy.
But you're sceptical of climate change
as insulation, but insulation is one way of using energy.
It's not
the thing
either or, though, is
it's free to the consumer at the point of delivery, if you like.
Yeah, that's
but we,
a good idea.
we all have to pay for it. It's going to be about a couple of £100 a year on our bills. I mean, 11 billion, about 2/3 of the cost of Hinkley. I don't know, you must have some sort of doubt.
Well, I think that's why I've got a problem at the moment, is because the government's own report, which they sneaked out during Trump week, hoping nobody would notice, actually spotted just that the cost-benefit ratio isn't working at the moment. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. We cannot carry on as we are with the current rollout of this programme, because they've got the smart meters that they began to roll out aren't going to work with the new technology.
All right, I'm going to turn the lights out on that particular discussion, thank you, because it's time for a canter now through the West's political week in just 60 seconds. On Tuesday, the West's MPs let off steam at a debate about trains. It was called by Charlotte Leslie, who was concerned about the electrification of the Great Western Mainline being delayed.
This is about the South West being sick of being the poor relation in our nation's transport projects, while other high-speed projects go roaring on.
The leader of Somerset County Council labelled the Chancellor's autumn statement a missed opportunity. He'd wanted extra funds for social care.
Things will start to fall down. Hopefully not in Somerset, but in other areas of the country, services are really struggling.
But the Chancellor did grant the Wellington Monument in Somerset £1 million for restoration work. Wiltshire Air Ambulance will also receive £1 million, with the money coming from banking fines. And the council in Cheltenham is to consider bringing in a bird of prey to keep the gull population under control. The bird's aggressive behaviour has been upsetting local residents. They take your fish and chips. Thangham, you were in that debate about electrification. What do you think of the delay?
Well, I'm furious, actually. I mean, there's all sorts of myths being put about the electrification postponement. It's postponing for many years. We don't know when it's going to come back, and it's a missed opportunity. But that's just typical of the budget of this government, which this week has failed to deal with the clear and present danger that we're in with Brexit, the £122 billion black hole in our finances. And where is our electrification? Is only a small part of that. We need investment in infrastructure.
It's all money, I suppose. But, William, what do you reckon? I mean, Europe is electrified.
We should cancel HSR2, on which billions have been spent already, with absolutely nothing to show for it, and make sure that we electrify the line all the way to Penzance. That's what we should do. That's what would be in the interest of the South West and indeed the country as a whole.
I mean, the thing with it's down to money, though, isn't it? And
cancel HSR2 is a
John
solution.
McDonnell wants to spend $500 billion on investment.
He actually wants it slightly more complicated than that. So, I mean, it's too complicated to go into right now. But I think the most important thing is we need to sort out investment in skills and infrastructure for the 21st century.
All right, thank you. And that's all we have time for this week. My thanks to my guests, Thangham and William. We'll see you again at the same time next week. But for now, let's return to London and Andrew, who's waiting for us.